Hey squad, this is Brandon from the Bantu Sun, and welcome to my Bantu Sense. So today I wanted to talk about. I've been going through my social media, and one of the things I noticed is a relatively anti-U.S. energy, and I wouldn't say anti-U.S. energy. I want to say anti-imperialist U.S. energy, and I really want to talk about this because it makes me think about The Dark Knight. For those that have seen the movie, there's a quote in it where it's said to Bruce Wayne, or Bruce Wayne says, I forgot who it was, but basically it was a quote that said, either you die a hero or live to become a villain. And I really wanted to draw that contrast now. I like to sit back and reflect on this journey of the U.S. from the 13 colonies sandwiched along the eastern seaboard of the Atlantic, or its east coast bordering the Atlantic Ocean. And I think about its rise and the things that America done in its rise and how it got to this point as the most wealthy and powerful country the world has ever seen. And I really do think there is somewhat of this Dark Knight sentiment. I think that America has done some drastic things, but I can't think of any country uh, that hasn't, given the need and the capacity to do so. There's been many great oppressions and genocide throughout history. Should the United States be more criticized because their genocides and their oppression has been advantageous or most advantageous to them, whereas others has been a calamity, such as the purges of Stalin in the Soviet Union. If the Soviet Union was to become successful and powerful, will the Soviet Union be looked at revered, or will it be the same sentiment? And this idea that there have been greater harm to the world than good. I do believe that at one time, if you look at the approach of when America came onto the world stage, it had been two world wars. It had this Cold War where you had these communist bases and much suffering in these communist bases, such as Cambodia, great famines, Soviet Union, and China. The rise of communism, the confiscation of wealth from private citizens, saying it completely turned some of these countries into just political entities. So economics matter in a free market economy or a relatively capitalistic economy, and you're given the opportunity to rise through entrepreneurial ventures. But this doesn't exist in a purely political or theocratic entity because these are zealots. And what you see is these people still have economic interests, but what they do is they monopolize these economic interests, and then they give up the facade as though they are more well to do because they are more committed or zealous by nature. But all it does is really create this great disparity between have and have nots. And unlike in a free market capitalist system, there's no opportunity to rise in these theocratic or communistic societies. You're pretty much pinned down because the rules of free market and advancing oneself have been completely thrown out the window. So what you can say is America's legacy is a preservation of somewhat of the individual rise, the respect or place for the middle class, and not the condemnation to perpetual poverty that is inherited upon our birth. We are born with nothing. We have no assets, no means of earning income, and can't even feed ourselves. And the only wave I've seen throughout histories, but throughout doing my geopolitical lessons boxes in which we provide to people, and upon this review, the only way that I've seen people come to a higher stage of development is through relatively free trade, because obviously free trade is quite rare, but through individual ownership, through investment, through the persuasion of people with things or people with resources to invest their money and not use it on themselves or or sit on it, but for people to use that money and to invest in others and their ideas to come up development wise or economically. And when I look at the social media and these people say these things in an antagonistic manner towards the United States, of course I'll say they. It's amazing that these social media platforms, these big ones, they're primarily all American made. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. They're probably primarily all American made, and that ability for them to have that freedom of speech in some of these countries, which I know they wouldn't be afforded that freedom of speech. For just that ability alone to be able to voice your opinions and not be immediately condemned as an enemy of state, I think it's something that should be cherished. I think the Bill of Rights is a political godsend of a person having a right to freedom of speech, person having a right to defend themselves, self-defense, private property, unreasonable search and seizures, all of these things which goes into a person's right and not given by man but ordained by God. I think that this is of course some of this is very high-minded and even lofty, but just the attempt where many countries would not even feign the attempt. So I do think we kind of do get lost in the battle. Of course, America does a lot of things that we can certainly critique, but I also think that well, I prefer to have a balanced view. As you say, as I say, I really don't want to use the words good and bad in any state's action. These are interest groups. That's what a political party is. They're there to facilitate commerce and protect vested interests. That's their entire if you look at whatever they do, it's going to be usually in one of those two buckets. So it's not really a good or bad because they all have their own interests. But just to step back and see, okay, if we do the pros and cons, are they really exceptional in either category? And I think that you just got to take the good with the bad in regards of either it's advantageous or disadvantageous. And that's really the only critique I can have for any state's action. Is it advantageous to the goals and the people, or is it disadvantageous for the goals of the people? So those are my 2 cents on this. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think I'm being too nice to the U.S.? Or do you think that, yeah, America has done more good than bad, especially if you look at a lot of these economies that have came up over the last 50 years? Like compare America to the Soviet Union, for instance. When the Soviet Union collapsed in the late 80s, early 90s, the former Soviet states that fell behind the Iron Curtain nearly broke their neck trying to get into NATO's and the Western institution. They have spent 70 years, or by this time, about 50 years with Russia and the greater Soviet Union, and all they could dream of was getting away and then forming the defense lines against Russia. There was no goodwill at the end of the Soviet Union, and they ran towards the United States, where the United States really didn't have a similar effect. They're keeping a lot of allies and enemies, such as uh, Japan and Germany. These are still major allies for the United States, even though America imposed great damage on them during World War II. So the ability of America to build these alliances, I think, speaks volumes, and I think that volume is America has persuaded them that it's better to work with us than against us. And I don't think that's purely by force. I think a lot of it could Japan and Germany, uh, in particular, these are two top five economies at this stage in the world. So these countries have done relatively well as far as gross domestic production. It's probably nowhere where you can go where there's not going to be a German or Japanese car. And I think a lot of that was their relationship with America and America developing a lot of these countries. Look at South Korea, a lot of countries in Southeast Asia. When you look at a lot of the business that has grown, even the opening of China, are the pictures of Dao Jinping walking around America in rodeo hats and seeing basketball players, seeing the fruition of what happened when you have economic development. This was all the United States. So I don't really believe that you can really condemn the U.S., but let me know your thoughts. I'll be glad to hear it. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share if you're enjoying the content. As well, check out some of our products in our Amazon store right now below. We have some great geopolitical content. If you believe that learning about other countries' resources, their history, and their culture is advantageous and beyond advantageous, necessary in the modern world, please check out our content. Guarantee you won't be disappointed. Thank you for your time. Till next time, Bantu up. Take care.